Thank you for auditing the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who's recording again in the I Theodore bedroom studio upstairs. The baby's downstairs playing, and my daughter's doing a SAT prep at this exact moment. So it's an interesting time in the class. That's why I'm up here. And I'm going to finally be talking about Prelude to Ecstasy by The Last Dinner Party. Now, why is it taking me so long, like almost a month, to review this album? Well, you know, they had all that Yay stuff. I had to take care of all that. For some reason, the name of this band reminded me of The Divine Comedy, which is like a band that I like, but for some reason that bugged me. And the album cover made me think of it too. I don't know. And then Fantano came out and he repped the album super hard. And there's something weird, like when I first hear of a band through a Fantano positive review, I sort of feel like I shouldn't talk about it because like he's got it covered. Ridiculous. It's stupid. We do totally different things. I don't do at all the same thing that he does, except talk about new music and be generally cool dudes. So anyways, so I've gotten a lot of requests. And what's interesting is, you know, one of the requests said, you know, this is the new Wet Leg. And as you know, I really like the band Wet Leg. A couple other people said, you know, this is the new Black Country New Road. This is the new British post-punk outfit. Just to be clear, I'm no longer going to be using the term British post-punk. The term I am now sort of coining, hopefully, is the European Anglosphere. So that way we can capture all the stuff that's happening in Ireland as well. Okay? Tell me if that's a good idea. European Anglosphere, right? That encompasses a lot more than just Britain. And really, I just, you know, I just sort of like put this album out of my head and then I finally listened to it. There's sort of a lot of hype around it, you know. I saw some, I don't know, Instagram post somewhere, you know, the Rising Brit Award, and part of me felt like, okay, is this just going to be some kind of like mediocre project that just has really good PR? Is this just going to be kind of a fun, cute story? No, it's just a great album. It's just a great album by a very rising Brit band, okay? By just a really great band. You can even just tell by the name of the band, The Last Dinner Party, that rules. You know, it gives you the sense of some kind of bacchanalian scene, some kind of wild party, but then the last on it, I don't know. Maybe it's because we're coming out of the COVID era. Maybe it's because we're thinking a lot about the seas rising. Something about it feels very of the moment as well. And then calling something a prelude when the name of your band is the last of something is sort of like the last thing you're ever going to experience is not even a thing, but leading up to that thing. And then, before I even hit play, I was sold on this album because it was produced by James Ford. So, I mean, James Ford, that guy's the Jack Antonoff of rock, you know, he does not miss. And I can't hear, I've reviewed one Arctic Monkeys album. I don't know the Arctic Monkeys at all. But I know James Ford is the Geese dude. All right. And that Geese album was one of the best albums. I said it was the second best album of the year last year. Will this album be that high up? Maybe. I don't know. I mentioned my teenage daughter. You know, we listen to a lot of music together. We're a lot alike in a lot of ways, as will happen with your children. And a funny thing happens where, you know, because I'm listening to new music all the time, right? Just all the time. And sometimes she doesn't like it. Like she hates Chromeo, review coming soon. But usually she likes what I like as well. And if it's like a female rock band, I can tell that there's like a need in her soul, I don't know what, like she wants, as someone who's an aspiring musician, someone who's learning how to play guitar, trying to start a band in this terrible bandless existence. There's very few bands in high schools, people, just so you know. If you're like my age and you grew up and there's a battle of bands all the time, it's just not like that. Kids these days aren't starting bands. They're sitting in their bedrooms and they're playing blipsy bloops on their Xboxes and Fruit Loops, okay? So anyways, if it's a female band, that's not like I'm okay, this is what's good for my daughter, but I know that it might connect with her. And we listened to this album, and I remember when this happened with Billie Eilish. I'm one of the few 46-year-old men who introduced his daughter to Billie Eilish. I remember when it happened with Boy Genius, where you just sort of get this sense, this kind of inspirational, joyous feeling of like, oh, thank God, there's more people out there who might have had a similar life experience to me, might have felt the same frustrations, might feel the same limitations, the same expectations, and managed to create the kind of art that I want to make. Now, I'm projecting a lot, okay? She just said, yeah, Dad, it's really good. But come on, all right? I know my kids. Tonight, hopefully, we'll have enough time. We'll go to the Record Archive in Rochester, New York. They're not a sponsor. They're not. But I give them free publicity because it's the best record store in the world. And it's here in Rochester, New York. And Amoeba Records, you suck, okay? You do. Compared to Record Archive. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me, Rasputin? Get out of here, California posers. Anyways. It's just a great album. It's just a great album. It's really fun to listen to. I heard a lot of things on the headphones when I listened today for the first time with headphones, but for the most part, I've just been banging this album in the house, banging this album in the car, through the Bluetooth speaker, really, really enjoying it. Thematically, I am tempted to say that it's unified by the theme of longing, which I think is fair. Longing to be something that you're not, a lot more about that soon. Longing to feel how you don't. Longing to have skills that you don't. Longing for love that you lost. But actually, what this album makes me think of most, and I'm probably going to title my video something along the lines of this, is Simone de Beauvoir. Simone de Beauvoir. It's by pure happenstance that Amazon delivered this to my door, I don't know, 3 days ago. Around Valentine's Day, I think a lot of this quote from, because we don't really do Valentine's Day in my house because it's weird, patriarchal, commercial garbage, right? And there's this quote from Simone de Beauvoir. I actually once made Valentine's Day cards with this quote on it. L'amour authentique devrait être fondé sur la reconnaissance réciproque de deux libertés. Authentic love must be founded on the reciprocal recognition of two liberties. Okay, so I just had this in my head, and I mentioned it, and I talked about it, and I talk about the Beauvoir with just in general, in my life. And so I just said, we don't have a copy of that in English. I have a copy of French at my office, right? But we don't have a copy of it for English. You need to have this book. People ask me all the time, Skye, what can I read? What's my reading list? Well, I give it to you piecemeal. This right here is something that you need to own. This book. 1949. 1949, she lays it all out. Now listen, she's not the only feminist you have to read, and she existed before the term feminist ever existed. And I would guess that maybe she'd be bristled at being called a feminist. I don't know. But this is a super important work. It is very influential, very important, and I feel this book, intentional or unintentional, or just sort of like the world that she created, the observations that she made, have flowed down into existence to the point where this album, the Last Dinner Party album, feels like a companion piece to The Second Sex by Simone de Beauvoir. If you've been paying attention to my channel a lot, you will know I also referred to Simone de Beauvoir in her description of Marilyn Monroe when I described the Megan Thee Stallion review. That was some of my best work. If you haven't seen it, check that out. But I don't like Megan Thee Stallion. Maybe you like me. I don't know. Okay? So, listen, I'm going to refer to this a couple times. Not as much as I'd like. But just in case, Are these my messed up glasses? Oh no, these are the ones that I didn't sit on, and they're still crooked. Just to give you an idea of some of the things that she was writing in 1949. Okay? Once woman is dethroned by the advent of private property, her fate is linked to it for centuries. In large part, her history is intertwined with the history of inheritance. Go ahead, think about that for the rest of your life. Little by little, man mediated his experience and his representations as his practical existence. The male principle triumphed. Spirit prevailed over life, transcendence over eminence, technology over magic, and reason over superstition. The devaluation of woman represents a necessary stage in the history of humanity. For she derived her prestige not from her positive value, but from man's weakness. She incarnated disturbing natural mysteries. Man escapes her grasp when he frees himself from nature. Okay, these are just some of the things that we're talking about here, but most of what we're going to be talking about is the most famous passage from this. Chapter 1 of, I believe it's is it officially part 2? Yes. Part 2, childhood. One is not born, rather becomes woman. okay, about the fact that it's actually society that creates women, that women do not exist until society creates them. That also happens to be interesting about this group, because this is a rock band that has 5 female members. Now listen, you're going to sit there and you're going to say, Skye, come on, get with the times. It's the 21st century. There's really not that many female rock groups with all female members, especially with 5 members. Now before you start saying that I'm a sexist, fair. It's about that socialization aspect, okay? Women in general, girls especially, are not socialized to be rock and roll musicians. That's just not part of the programming. So when it ends up happening that there are female musicians, they are often part of a band, or it might be a female-led band with a bunch of dudes behind them making music. It might be this, it might be that, but it's part of what makes it interesting is that this band is all women. And that sounds ridiculously reductive, and it is. But it's also important to recognize as reinforcing a lot of the messages that they're talking about. So much of this album is about wishing that they had the freedoms that men have in the way that men are socialized. Okay? In this book, there's like just little details. She goes on for pages and pages and pages about the glory and the freedom of being able to piss standing up. Okay? Little tiny things like that are the kinds of things that de Beauvoir is talking about. Side note, a lot of de Beauvoir's writing is complicated by trans questions. So I'm not saying that de Beauvoir is the answer to everything, but you can have an answer to anything if you don't have her work sort of as a base level, if that makes sense. So anyways, I think about Wet Leg and the fact that they won all those Grammys and they won all those awards. And they won all those Grammys and they won all those awards when realistically their album was not the best album in that genre that came out that year. I mean, Black Country New Road came out that year, right? That album, right? Shut up, that album's so good, right? And I think it's sort of a weird case where the rareness of female-led rock groups is leading to a slight prejudice in their favor by tastemakers and people who would give out awards. Don't you dare think I'm saying reverse sexism. It's not that. It's a part of patriarchy, okay? Our goal is to achieve equality to the point where there's so many female-led rock bands, and it's coming. Once the Taylor Swift generation keeps coming in America, the only musicians left are going to be women, okay? I'm telling you. That's the real Taylor Swift conspiracy. All the boys are playing video games, all the girls are playing music, and it's great, all right? But like that's the goal. The goal would be for Wet Leg to not win the award. That's when, you know, we've made progress. But first you have to get to the phase where they do win the award. Does that make sense? So first they don't exist, or they're so marginalized it's like they don't exist. Then they kind of exist and they are sort of recognized. Then they exist and they're recognized, potentially even over-recognized, and then eventually they will hopefully reach a state where they are just sort of forgotten. I talk a lot about this stuff, okay? And I talked about Fantano. I didn't watch his review. I assume he doesn't go on lengthy tirades about feminism and everything, but I think about it a lot because I'm a father of daughters, right? And I'm not, Jesus Christ, that sounds like a Republican lawmaker. I think a lot about the fact that I have daughters. I think a lot about the world that they live in. And it's interesting because a lot of my thought, I grew up with 3 brothers and my mom was nice, but she was fairly made small sort of in my house. My father was a very large figure. So like my relationship towards women and understanding women and women's issues is very limited on a personal basis. So it's fascinating using feminism and music like this, which is beautifully on the nose. It's beautifully earnest. It's beautifully forward with its feminist statements. It's not even like trying to be edgy with it. It's not even trying to be mysterious with it. It's just being out there with it, which I really, really appreciate. The singer of this band, okay, is there just one singer? I can't tell. But the voices on this album, the first thing I heard, the first thing I heard I don't know how clear this is. I don't know if everyone says this about the band or if I'm going to say it and you're all going to say you're crazy. But to me, the number one influence I hear is Susie Sue from Susie and the Banshees. Except Susie and the Banshees is so hard to separate from the kind of music that Susie and the Banshees makes, that kind of awesome, far away, looking out the window on a train. We can call it goth, but at what point do we just have to accept that goth is a gendered term? There's an essay I'll never write. Hey, if you want to write that essay, could you? I think that'd be pretty good. Certainly in terms of like the audience. Anyways, if you could be Susie Sue without being goth, that's how this is. But at times also, the voice reminds me of Annie Lennox or Chrissie Hynde. Or, and this is my favorite, ABBA. I don't know which of ABBA is the singer. I think A. Like, the similarity between all of these is we live in a time where female vocalists generally are, there's a sort of 2020 sound of female vocalists. It's very melismatic. It's very whispery. It's very smoky. Okay? Female vocalists here, paf, okay? It is not that at all, with the exception of one song. It is not that at all. It is really out front. It is really pokey. It is really punchy. It feels like it might be from the 80s. It feels like it might be from the 90s. It feels like it might be from the 70s. It does not feel like this weird sort of the now, which I think is really nice. Accompanied with it is just great songwriting. Great songwriting and great production, right? Like what more do you want? I also want to say this one more thing, okay? Stop just liking first albums from post-punk bands. Okay, I just reviewed that Idols album, and a lot of people left comments about how bad the album is. Yo, you are tripping. That album is great. And I'm sure when The Last Dinner Party releases their second album, when Wet Leg releases their second album, everyone's going to come out and say how it's not. No, it's just they're new and they're shiny, and that's exciting. But hold on to this feeling. The excitement that you have for Last Dinner Party now, hold on to that. Just break off one little rib and save it till later, okay? And give them this kind of joy and excitement. So you're not just trying to clap for the goddamn Rookie of the Year every single time, okay? Speaking of second album, this album has one weird idiosyncrasy. One song. Okay, do you know Radiohead? You probably know Radiohead. Do you know the album The Bends? So Pablo Honey was their first album, and there's a fine, sort of mostly forgettable, but slightly better than average alternative rock album of the 90s. Okay? Anyone Could Play Guitar is a great song. Creep's a great song. Use a great song. Beyond that, I can't really think. Then they came out with The Bends, and The Bends was a much more adventurous album, but still very much just a rock album. And then they came out with their mind-bending masterpiece of OK Computer that stretched the conception of what alternative music could be, blah, 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 blah. There's one song on this album by Last Dinner Party, Nothing Matters, which I think is the single, which is like so ambitious, so catchy, and so good in a different way that I feel like it should be on their next album. Like, it would be like if Airbag was on The Bends. That's how it makes me feel. That's how, like, this Nothing Matters song feels like the rest of the album. This feels kind of apart from it. That doesn't mean that the other stuff is bad and this is good, or this is good and the other stuff is bad. I think I said the same thing backwards. But just that's how I feel. So anyways, if you like this video, smash the like button, subscribe. What else can you do? You can buy my mug, I guess. I have other merch on there too, but I don't know how to link it in the thing. So I had that Mickey Mouse shirt I'm going to be taking off. Apparently it's a total piece of crap. Don't buy it. Do not buy my Mickey Mouse shirt. It's garbage. I'm still sponsored. I'm sponsored by, if you have health insurance, you should try to find a therapist, okay? Every health insurance company has online sites where you can look and try to find a therapist. Even if it might take you a couple weeks or a month or so, the benefit that you'll have with having a meaningful, connected relationship, if possible in person, but even over Skype is fine, that's probably really going to help you more than some kind of app, okay? You probably don't want to Uber mental health. But Uber's better than starving to death. So if that's the only way you can do it, that's fine. But anyways, that's my sponsor for this episode. See if you can get a therapist through your health insurance if you're lucky enough to have it. All right, so let's talk about this album. Now, here's my stamp. My stamp is that weird song that doesn't fit in, Nothing Matters. What I like about this song is that it is so unbelievably catchy, and it absolutely knows it. The first verse, it's not even that the first verse is forgettable. It's just once you've heard the song once, you're like, give me the chorus. Give me the chorus. Come on, give me the chorus. Give me the chorus. Give me the chorus. And then, hey, what is this drummer doing? Really tasteful. This song without that drum line. Apparently, the drummer's name is like Rain or something. I totally forget. I just looked it up. Apparently, she's the only non-full-time member of the band because she's a studio musician who plays with Hozier. Hey, speaking of the Anglosphere, who works with Hozier and the 1975. So I guess she's like a gun for hire. But god damn, the drum lines are good on this album. Really, really good. Really, really tasteful. You know, it has this great dancing feel. You know, you're able, like, this is just the kind of song you just want to roll down the window and just drive, and you want to scream it out, and you want to sit there in the car, and you want to drive, and you're sitting there, and you're driving, and you got your baby daughter in the baby seat, and you got your wife next to you, and you got your teenage daughter behind you, and you want to sing, and you can hold me like an elder, and I will, ooh, okay. I guess no one wants to hear their dad scream that sentence out very loud. But that's part of the strength of this song. Holding and fucking, right? This amazing lyric of like vulnerability and loss and longing, right? You can hold me like you held her. I thought she said like an elder, but this makes a lot more sense. You can hold me like he held her. I mean, and I will fuck you like nothing matters. Like, the pain, that lyric. You know, there's some lyrics where when people write them, they should just take it easy. They should just, the rest of the day. I hope, I don't know which member of the band writes these lyrics. Whoever it is, I hope you took the rest of the day off. I hope you just said, you know, I'm just gonna chill, make some food, go for a walk, maybe go to a movie, you know? Let's just hang out. Because I just wrote those lyrics. And those lyrics are some of the best lyrics I could have possibly written. You know, it's great because the way the F word comes in there, it's like, whoa, because we're sitting here and we're bopping around. And I will, whoa, she just dropped an F-bomb. Beautiful. And then there's even a little pop bridge, My Little Theory. So they're on a record label. They're on a major label. Remember how I was talking about that whole thing? Like how we need to get to a point where a band like this doesn't get signed? Okay? Because it's like there's a lot of great bands in the Anglosphere, European Anglosphere post-punk scene who aren't on major labels, and maybe they should be, but they're just a bunch of kind of pasty dudes, and we're used to seeing a bunch of pasty dudes with guitars playing music. But still, this feels to me like maybe they said, hey, listen, ladies, we got a hit here, all right? I'm imagining James Ford. I don't know what he looks like. Let's imagine him as a 500-pound guy wearing a full white suit, a white top hat, and a cigar, okay? You tell me in the comments if that's exactly what James Ford looks like. Ladies, this is a hit. Every hit needs a bridge, okay? We got to just whip something up here. We need to have another excuse to wait for that chorus. To have another chorus, okay, ladies? All right. I think he's British, too. It all works. I think I just described Boss Hogg. Put my heart inside your palms, my home inside your arms. Now we know nothing matters, nothing matters. It's great because a lot of these songs make me think of other songs. Like this reminds me of the song Nothing Else Matters by Metallica. Boom, bam, ba-doo, ba-be-doo, right? But it's not at all that. And then after this moment in the bridge, do you know what this band does? Do you know what this band does? They have a guitar solo. Oh my God, you guys. There's a guitar solo. There's guitar solos all over this album. And the guitarist isn't some kind of... No, the guitarist here is just a great guitar player who writes very tasteful, interesting, melodic solos. The best kind of solos. Memorable, quality solos. Not the kind of solos that make the people down at the Guitar Center go, whoa, dude can shred. Right? But the kind of guitar solos that make music reviewers, music crickets like me just say, listen to that wonderful, tasteful, well-written guitar solo. Because guitar solos are dead. Rock and roll is dead. All this stuff is dead. And yet, here we are. It's alive as possible. What an amazing freaking song. And again, the whole thing, hey drummer, you should also take a break. You should also have taken a day off after you came up with that. All right, let's go through the rest of the album a little bit quicker than that, but let's be honest, it's going to get pretty slow when I have to read this entire book to you. Prelude to Ecstasy is the opening. It's like a prelude. It really announces the ambitions of this album. So, okay, while I'm here, okay, so what makes this book so fascinating is it really lays out how society determines what a woman's place is and what feminine is. Okay? And in particular, it's always placing sort of passivity as a sort of, you know what? I have the quote right here. Thus, the passivity that essentially characterizes the feminine woman is a trait that develops in her from her earliest years. But it is false to claim therein lies a biological given. In fact, it is a destiny imposed on her by her teachers and by society. The great advantage for the boy is that his way of existing for others leads him to posit himself for himself. He carries out the apprenticeship of his existence as free movement towards the world. He rivals other boys in toughness and independence. He looks down on girls, climbing trees, fighting with his companions, confronting them in violent games. He grasps his body as a means to dominate nature and as a fighting tool. He is proud of his muscles and he is of his sex organ. Though through games, sports, fights, challenges, and exploits, he finds a balanced use of his strengths. At the same time, he learns the severe lessons of violence. He learns to take blows, to deride pain, to hold back tears from his earliest age. He undertakes, he invents, he dares. Granted, he also experiences himself as if for others. He tests his own virility and consequently trouble ensues with adults and friends. But it is very important that there is no fundamental opposition between this objective figure that is his and his will for self-affirmation in concrete projects. Which essentially means boys get to be heroes. Boys get to be epic. Boys get to do things and not be passive because we were socialized that way. Opening up an album like this kind of bombastic, cinematic, we've got bassoons, we've got French horns, we have harp flourishes. This is setting up this album to be an epic, to be a big story. When traditionally, stories of women and for women are small stories of passive resistance, of quiet dignity, of quiet this and quiet that. This album sets up the show. God damn it, everything sounded so good. I meant to say this song sets up the show. I said this album sets up the show. The album is the show. Listen, I don't edit my videos, so I'm just gonna have to say it again. You're going to be impressed, okay? Tell me in the comments, Skye, I'm impressed. This song sets up the show. Nailed it. First track is called Burned Alive or Burn Alive. Great echoing guitars. Very flat bass drum sound. It sounds kind of far away. And then when the vocals come in again, seriously, hire this drummer, would you? Give her a cut of the songwriting so that she plays with you all the time. Okay? What's she going to do? Play with Hoser? These guys are way better than Hoser. Oh, sorry. Hoser fans already hate me. I like Hoser. What did I do? Anyways, the drum lands off, and way better than 1975. Jesus. You know, the drum lands kind of offbeat with the vocals, and that's just such a cool sound. And it's very Susie Sue all over the place with these vocals. I don't know if this is an intentional inspiration or not. Some synths are kind of hidden. Like I didn't hear that until I listened on headphones. Beautiful, nice keyboards, kind of double vocal towards the end. this is that thing where I really think James Ford deserves a lot of credit, and I'm not just trying to give a dude credit for a bunch of female musicians, but I would do it if it's the other way around. Yes, James Ford also did this for Geese. He just really knows how to not impose too much, but really help layer things in interesting ways and make sure that it's never too busy and never boring. Like, I don't know. I'm not a super producer, but I imagine if you're a super producer and you go to a super producer convention, the thing that you circle is the talk. How to be interesting without being busy or boring. That's what he's able to do. Break me off a rib to make another you. Okay. That's in here too. Okay, she describes in great detail how Adam and Eve, the story itself, sets up that passivity that I mentioned earlier, and that a woman is always going to be otherized because the man is the protagonist and a woman is the other, right? That's the constant. What? Oh, God. The audio cut out. I don't know how it happened. So I'm recording the next day. I was watching along with the live premiere. I was chatting with everybody. Some people gave me some precisions, corrected me on a few things, which I'll bring up here. And then all of a sudden the audio cut out. Do you know what a terrible feeling it is to be watching a video and proud of your work and just be sitting there and think, oh, right, this is getting out there. People are liking this. And then no audio. So anyways, I'm going to take action. It's a pretty big operation over here. So I'm going to go right now and I'm going to fire the sound guy, and I'm going to fire the guy in charge of quality control, because this is just unacceptable. Toby, I don't know how many times I've told you this. You got to keep the mics charged, okay? I need you to do better, okay? Bo, you're sleeping on the job, buddy. You're supposed to do quality control. You're supposed to watch the whole videos all the way through. See if I say dumb stuff like, the drummer's really great. I wonder what her name is, okay? You gotta do quality control. And I just feel like you just sit here and you just sleep in your bed next to your brother. Okay, tell me in the comments if you think they deserve their jobs back, okay? Maybe just one of them. I'm telling you, Bo is already back asleep right now. So anyways, one of the things I want to say is Amoeba Records is a great place. I love Record Archive, but I love the location in Berkeley. I don't like the one in the Haight so much, but I really like the one in Los Angeles as well. Anyways, where were we? Well, we were talking about this great album, and it's great because since the time when the sound cut out, I've had a chance to re-listen to the album again, refresh, and here we are with the next track, Caesar on a TV Screen. Beautiful, almost like, you know, I talked about this before, just sort of a general tendency towards musical-like music, you know, and I think this really has that general feeling to it. Also sort of like 50s style guitar, and this is the song that really made me understand and really made me draw home this idea of Simone de Beauvoir and this album. By the way, your screen's not wrong. They put that fuzzy, so it looks like it's fuzzy like that. So this song is really what I would call If I Were a Man music, okay? And it's not so much talking about that men are better. It's more about the agency that men are given in society, the power they are given to be non-passive, as I mentioned previously, non-passive members of society. As she says, when I was a child, I never felt like a child. I felt like an emperor with a city to burn. I got down on my knees, begged men and trees to give me an answer. Je ne veux pas penser. The rest of it she talks about like if she was a man and she had the shoulder pads and she'd be able to talk with confidence. And this goes back. It's fascinating that she takes us back to childhood because, you know, that's where a lot of these things happen. A lot of what's interesting in what Beauvoir puts forth is the way the socialization happens over time. Petit à petit, you know, and then eventually it becomes very, very strong. So in spite of these compensations, you know, any benefits to being a little girl, she does not accept her assigned destiny without regret. Growing up, she envies the boys their virility. Sometimes parents and grandparents poorly hide the fact they would have preferred a male offspring to a female. Boys are spoken to with more seriousness and more esteem, and more rights are granted them. They themselves treat girls with contempt, they play amongst themselves, and exclude girls from their group. But girls are reprimanded if they want to compete or fight with them. They doubly envy singularly boyish activities, they have a spontaneous drive to affirm their power over the world, and they protest against their inferior situation they are condemned to. They suffer in being forbidden to climb trees, ladders, and roofs, among other activities. Now, obviously, there's been some growth in that particular area of climbing trees, but still, it still remains the same. We still have the same basic idea of girls not being given the same agency and the same ability to have that kind of protagonist adventure and to speak and to take up space. It may be 2024, but it's not that far from 1949. I love the singing on this song. I mean, all the way throughout this whole album, I really like the singing. This is maybe the most ABBA feeling. Maybe that's because the ABBA thing is, connected to kind of a musical sound. I don't know. It changes quite a bit. It gets very campy at points as well. This album can be quite campy. This image of the Caesar on the TV screen, and there's these horns and these drum fills. By the way, I found out, thank you, Paolo, longtime viewer and auditor, it turns out James Ford is the drummer on this album. I didn't know. You look at the credits on Tidal, it just, like, the harpist is given credit on every single song. So it's very confusing. So it turns out that whoever is the studio drummer who plays with them in concert, I guess maybe shouldn't be the official drummer. I don't know. And then that leads next to the feminine urge. Do you see what I'm saying? That this album is not subtle with its feminist messagery, and it should not be. Let's have meme time with Professor Skye. I used to spend a lot of time. My dad, before he passed a year ago, he used to ask me very often, Skybar, what's a meme? And I would explain it to him for like 45 minutes, and then with examples. And then a week later, Skybar, what's a meme? You know what a meme is, though. But the feminine urge is simultaneously a reference to a very long-standing tradition, something we'll talk about with the Beauvoir, but let's take a second and actually address the feminine urge, the meme. So New York Times had a whole article about it. New York Times, who's always correct, who didn't release an article that claimed that Travis Kelce's hairstyle is the Travis. Please see the Signified B-Sides video about cultural appropriation. Ouch! New York Times? Maybe you are the failing New York Times. God damn. Anyways, they wrote about this meme. Meme makers have used the format both satirically and earnestly, but most often to poke fun at their own desires and tendencies. So it's a very complicated meme because it's based on this. You write the feminine urge to, and then you say something that is often considered stereotypically feminine, usually some kind of feminine weakness, whether it's a sort of learned helplessness or inability to do something, and usually there's an indication that part of that is that you get something from it. My daughter gave me an example, and I talked to her about this video, where she said the feminine urge to pretend like you're not good at math so that your partner can do most of the group work, right? It's like playing with it. It's trying to sort of take agency over that stereotype and use it to your advantage, but obviously it's still negative. Other examples I found online, the feminine urge to start sentences with "I think" when in actuality I know for a fact. In that case, it's more just a direct criticism. It's an interesting thing, and I am not a feminist scholar, okay? Were I a feminist scholar, I would definitely spend a lot of time trying to decode and unpack all of these meanings. Like, what is implied in the feminine urge? What is implied by the people who say it? How much are they accepting and how much are they fighting against these stereotypes? Now, the music itself is beautiful. It's got kind of a Be My Baby drum line. Boom, 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 ka. There's sort of a lot of Phil Spector style production. Not exactly a feminist hero. I love how the guitar chords sort of punctuate the ends of the line. There's this like languid lead guitar line, great soaring vocals. And again, we go into these whole themes of feeling like a man and wanting to feel like a man. I said this was an album of longing, and this is an album partly of longing about not being a man. Not because men are better and not because one's born into a wrong body, but just because of the privileges that are afforded. Oh, ballerina, bend under the weight of it all. Ain't it fun to hold the world in your hands? Do you feel like a man when I can't talk back? And then later, very explicitly feminist lyrics, "Oh, pull your boots up, boys, and push me down. I'm only here for your entertainment." She said, the singer, whose name I could have looked up in between from yesterday to today, but I didn't. That's okay. What's more important, that I know her name or that I respect her art? She said this is essentially about the generational trauma of being a woman, and in particular, the relationship between a mother and her daughter in relationship to the pains of being a woman. Now, one thing this video has that yesterday's video didn't have was I had a little more time with this book, and I thought, well, what if I just look up what Simone de Beauvoir wrote about motherhood? I wonder if this kind of generational trauma might be mentioned in here. Let's have a listen, huh? Hey, these new mics suck, but I can go far away and you can hear me just fine. I'm going to go over here now. The little girl is more wholly under the control of her mother. Her claims on her daughter are greater. Their relations assume a much more dramatic character. She projects onto her all of the ambiguity of her relationship with herself. And when the alterity of this alter ego affirms itself, she feels betrayed. The conflicts we have discussed become all the more intensified between mother and daughter. She projects onto her all of the ambiguity of her relationship with herself. And when the alterity of this alter ego affirms itself, she feels betrayed. This is actually, I believe, exactly what we're hearing in the song. Now, fascinatingly, props to Simone de Beauvoir. This is not in the song, I don't think, but I think it's an interesting thing that she mentions, that there's two different reactions to having a daughter if you are a woman. There's the positive one. There are women who are satisfied enough with their lives who want to reincarnate themselves in a daughter, or at least welcome her without disappointment. They would like to give her the child the same chances they had, as well as those they did not have. That's positive. But here's the negative, and this is what I wonder. Maybe this song goes this deep. Maybe this relationship is this problematic, okay? A certain masochistic form of motherhood that risks weighing heavily on the young daughter. Some women feel their femininity as an absolute curse. They wish for or accept a daughter with the bitter pleasure of finding another victim. And at the same time, they feel guilt at having brought her into the world. Their remorse and the pity they feel for themselves through their daughter are manifested in endless anxieties. They will never take a step away from the child. They will sleep in the same bed for 15 to 20 years. The little girl will be destroyed by the fire of this disquieting passion. Judith Thurman is the translator, and they did the introduction. The translator is Constance Borde and Sheila Malvani Chevalier. Excellent, much better translation than the ones I've read before. Right? I mean, I don't always get goosebumps, but that gave me goosebumps, the way she described that motherly relationship, this kind of trauma, this generational trauma that pops up. Do you see the joy that you can have when you tie together these intellectual little pursuits and then with the music, because the music's got you dancing and it's a great song. I'm only here for your entertainment. And then, on your side is the next song. I have a disagreement with the person who wrote this song, so there you go. Starts off with this nice high haunting voice with the piano. Really, not only are the drums great on this album, which it turns out are all James Ford, but the production of the drums is great. They're very full and bouncy. I really like this high whine in the chorus, very emphatic singing in the second verse. There's so much happening. I think the video cut out when I was talking. Why are my glasses still on? I think that this really shows, if you just take this song as an example, the way the vocals take a step up in the second verse is just amazing. Beautiful accented snare hits, so many layers of sound. Like, I bet this might be the best song in concert. They are playing in Toronto in a couple weeks. I don't know. Things are pretty tricky right now with all my daughters. It's pretty tricky in here for me to find time to take the trip to Toronto, but I might have to try and go see them, because I bet this is just great. Now, I told you I disagree with the artist. Apparently the artist said this is about a toxic relationship. To me, very few things get me to cry as much as a song about friendship, like Sommeil by Stromae, one of my favorite songs. about friendship, because I just feel it very strongly. So I read this as her being there for her friend. When it's 4 a.m. and your heart is breaking, I will hold your hand to stop them from shaking. If it takes all night, I'll be on your side. And you'll see what I wrote in my thing. I wrote, I want a friend like that. But hey, if we're talking about critical theory, maybe we're talking about the death of the author, okay? Nice, cool, uh-oh. I don't know what I wrote there, autocorrect. Anesthetic, moist ending? I don't know what that means. Let's move on to Beautiful Boys. I cannot think of Beautiful Boys without thinking of the song Beautiful Boy by John Lennon. I cannot think of the song Beautiful Boy by John Lennon without thinking of the kind of corny but also kind of charming ending of the Richard Dreyfuss movie, Mr. Holland's Opus. This has nothing to do with that. This is just a shout out for my Dreyfuss heads out there. He's not just an old boomer sitting on a couch with Beauvoir. He's a great actor. A Canadian treasure. He really is. Speaking of, hey, maybe when I go up and see this band in Toronto, I'll hang out with Richard Dreyfuss. Starts off with a flute and a piano. Just, there's so much orchestra all the way throughout this album. You know, an interesting thing about a lot of these groups that come in the sort of Anglosphere is that a lot of them are very, 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 very trained. And that's great. But I don't always want very, very trained. I don't want conservatory school music all the time. It can bring some great things. I think there can often be a simplicity that might be preferred, which is what I feel here. And then we get these wild lyrics, this wild opening lyric. The best a boy can be is pretty. It's so much of this album is just about patriarchy. Because what it says is, the best a boy can ever be is pretty. He launches ships on which he sails to safety. And what I'm feeling isn't lust, it's envy. He has the earth, makes love to her to spite me. So much in here. So, I mean, the last 3 lines of this are just about that whole thing I've been talking about. The agency, the power that boys and men have to feel like they can go out and do things. And it's not that she lusts after this pretty guy. It's that she envies his freedom, his ability to move with ease, and his ability to make decisions and to be the hero of the story and the album. But opening up with the best a boy can ever be is pretty is interesting, because then it's sort of like, if a boy has pretty privilege, then on top of everything, he has some of the privileges that pretty women allegedly have, right? Now, pretty women, I suppose, have certain privileges that are often curses. It's very complicated. And I think, presumably, what she's implying is that pretty men, pretty boys, like, that is the best. Like, you're set, you know? All male privilege plus beauty. Her voice is so clear that I thought my favorite point of the whole album was the way that she sang the word wreck. You know, this is one of those albums where you can listen to 1,000 times. I bet if you're watching this already, you're still watching this, you love this album. Have you noticed the way she sings wreck? Probably not, because actually the best word that she pronounces is beautiful. Beautiful. The ooh and beautiful. It sounds even better than when I do it. Beauvoir. Oh my God. This album. Okay, so we're essentially done with the little feminist suite that starts off the album. I went to Record Archive yesterday. I bought Tank. I bought The Smile. They didn't have The Dinner Party. They had it on CD, but realistically, I don't listen to CDs that much. I listen to them sometimes, but I'm going to wait for the vinyl. My daughter listens to more vinyl, so I'm going to get the vinyl so she can go upstairs, listen to it in her room. This is basically, that was the more or less closing the loop on that kind of Simone de Beauvoir section, and we're now going to enter a religious suite. Starting off with the song Beauvoir, which has this odd choir, these strange, almost Middle Eastern scales happening in here, some church organ at the end, some mandolin. What's the song about? This song is maybe the deepest song. This song could be its own album. This theme could be its own album because it's all sung in Albanian. Okay? Albania. You probably don't know much about Albania. What matters right now is not actually Albania. What matters is the fact that this singer, and this is not the lead singer, this is the keyboardist, a different singer in the group, is singing in Albanian because her mother is Albanian, her family is Albanian, and she doesn't speak Albanian. The song is about the loss that she feels at not speaking Albanian. What she's discussing now is not specific to her. It is universal For all immigrants through all history forever, it is as predictable as the sun rising, the sun setting, and Beau sitting in the sun in the middle of the afternoon. Okay? It is that predictable. When immigrants come to a country, they bring everything with them. Language, food, culture, okay? Dress, everything. As they assimilate, things start to fall off one by one by one by one until they become fully assimilated into the culture. Sometimes it takes one generation, sometimes it takes 10 generations, but it always happens. And it is always the same thing that goes first. Why do I sometimes talk like Tucker Carlson? I swear to God. It's so annoying. I don't mean to. The first thing that goes when a family immigrates is language. You want an example? Hey, do you know anybody who has an Italian last name? You probably do. I know like 30 people with Italian last names. How many of them speak Italian? Oh, was that 0? Oh, hey, wise ass in the back. Yeah, it doesn't count if they moved when they were 5. Okay? How many of them? Because that's the first thing that goes. Because if you want to assimilate, the first thing you got to do is speak the language. First thing you got to do is just kind of do that. And the next generation rejects the mother tongue. They always reject it. Always, 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 always. You know, my wife is Yugoslavian. I have a Yugoslavian baby. She's speaking Serbo-Croatian. She's speaking English. Well, she's speaking neither because it takes longer when you speak 2 languages. But eventually there's going to come a time where my little baby is going to say, I don't want to speak that language. I want to speak like everybody else. That's just the way that it goes. And it's not my baby's fault. And it's not whoever it is that's singing this song's fault. And it's not your friend's fault who doesn't speak Italian even though their last name is Rossetti. Okay, or Gattuso, all right? It's just the way that it goes. So this song illustrates that whole point. By the way, do you know what the last thing is to go? Tell you what, this right here. This is a jar of Ivar, which Dua Lipa says comes from Albania. The Serbs are not very happy with that. The Croats aren't very happy with that. No, everyone wants to claim Ivar, but anyways, it's just from that general area. This is a beautiful red pepper spread, one of my favorite smells in the world. It goes really nicely on so many different things. And I can guarantee you this will be eaten in my family for 10 generations, even when nobody has any connection to Yugoslavia. Hey, remember your friends who I was asking you about, the Italians? Are they proud of the Italian food that their family makes? Is it better than stuff they get at Olive Garden? If you went to your Italian friend's house and they said, oh, would you like some food? We'll make you some Italian food. You say, oh, that'd be great. That'd be great. I love Olive Garden. Do you guys make food as good as Olive Garden? Would you be put out on your ass onto the street? You probably would. Anyways, little lesson, language lesson. Next track is called Sinner. Banger after banger. So we have this whole thing, this whole like communion with language, and it leads into this song. And it had this beautiful moment where I was looking out the bird feeder with my baby. She's on this little wooden pedestal, and this song comes on, and she just starts rocking. I don't know what it is. This song really gets her. It's in that sort of ABBA style. There's so much dynamism in this album, like from song to song. Little guitar solos, very minimalist. Crazy bits with these like drum fills everywhere, and all these themes of like wishing that they knew someone before it was a sin. A lot of this is about like the pain of passing from childhood to adulthood and the friendship between people. When sexual attraction gets into it, it becomes like a sin. Little punctuations with strings. I could go into here about sexuality, about female sexuality and how it's in there, but that might be a little bit of a stretch. I think we'll just sort of say that it's an interesting theme. Then it goes into My Lady of Mercy. 4 on the floor and the bass drum. Beautiful little claps. I didn't even hear the claps until I listened to it on my headphones. I had to restart this song because when it got to the chorus, I was like, how did we get here? We started over. How do we get here? That kind of song. I love music like that. When I listen to it again, I really focus. Listen to the way the bass interplays with the voice and the way the guitar is used just to punctuate at the end of the sentences, and then it restarts and these drum fills, and it leads up to this whole church bit here. This full badass breakdown, is filled with drums and all this, talking about wanting church music. This is, I think, again, that kind of sense of longing, like wanting that sense of spirituality, that longing for a connection, some kind of spiritual connection. Almost reminds me of a James Bond bit at a certain point. It just gets ridiculously like big and epic, and it's awesome. And what she says, this is what the singer says, My Lady of Mercy is about being a girl. Shouldn't put that too far away from me. A girl looking up at a painting of Joan of Arc for the first time and thinking that she looks so brave and beautiful and that she wants to kiss her. And maybe also she wants to kiss the girl who stands next to her in the school choir. Interesting chapter on lesbianism as well on here. So this is a drawing, an original drawing from a children's book of Joan of Arc. I purchased this when I found out I was having another daughter because I wanted more art that reflects, female greatness. So isn't this beautiful? Isn't this just a beautiful, look at that. Look at the detail as she's getting her foot into the stirrups. Isn't that beautiful? You know, I wanted this power. And Joan of Arc is one of those few figures in world history that defies this whole narrative of women being passive and away. And of course, she had to be called crazy and burned at the stake and all that stuff in order for that to happen. But anyways, just so you know, if you ever meet a French person and they say they love Joan of Arc, just be careful. They might be a nationalist. The nationalists took the image of Joan of Arc for themselves. The same way that in America they did that, the Minutemen. It's really sad because I grew up next to Lexington, Massachusetts, where the Minutemen were. Now Minutemen are people who just patrol the border trying to sniper fire children who try to cross the border for a better life because the drug war that America imposed on their country made their life unlivable. So Joan of Arc has been taken. But listen, whenever the pig fuckers stop fucking pigs, the world will be better. But until then, if someone says they love Joan of Arc, just say why. And if they say, because she's an inspirational figure, very interesting, then you're safe. Portrait of a Dead Girl. This is that modern style, that melismatic Lana Del Rey style of singing, kind of whispering over piano. I don't want it. It's a cool song, cool stuff. Again, awesome drumming here on the hi-hat. The most British pronunciation on the whole album is on the word ask. A gorgeous moment with the choir, like, give me strength, give me strength. Then we get to the stamp, nothing matters, and then finally we end with mirror, just atmospheric, like timpanis. I think throughout the album there's multiple times where the drums being played with mallets. And just this great strings and the mirror, and the theme of a mirror is, okay, maybe we're never done with this. She talks about girls in front of a mirror. In that book, especially in terms of like exploring one's body and understanding who one is. Also, I'm reminded of the work of, I had a Franz Gall CD around here somewhere. Yeah, the mirror is a very important thing, especially because girls are socialized to spend a lot of time in the mirror and look at themselves a lot. I don't exist without your gaze. If this woman did not study French critical theory at some point in her life, I will rehire Bo and Toby and give them a raise, 2 kibbles each, okay? There's no way she did not study French critical theory. That is the most French critical theory thing you could possibly say, talking about the gaze, the way that you look. How poorly could it go? It's not like there's any famous female British figures in pop culture who studied French at uni and ended up becoming terrible transphobes. J.K. Rowling, in case you didn't know. Voldemort means thief of death and flight from death. Her whole books are just filled with all these great French observations. I used to bring them to my class and I used to share them and they used to love them. But now I'm not going to platform that ghoul. Anyways, amazing lyrics. Just I like how they change, like no one knows you until you drown. No one knows you after you drown. And there's a weird thing about this album where I listen to albums at the gym and you'd think that like Sinner would be the song that would get me the most pumped. This got me the most pumped. I can't explain it. It concludes with the orchestral thing, which serves as like an outro, and then it brings us back to the intro if you're listening to it on repeat on a streaming service like I do on Tidal, and the whole thing forms a nice, gigantic, momentic, heroic cycle of womanhood, difficulties of girlhood, and triumph over society's oppression. That's all. All right. Well, anyways, these are my Patreons. they gave me money, which allowed me to go buy the Tank album and the Smile. Vukovic should be over here, but I keep forgetting to put his name up there. Thanks, Vuk. Which means wolf in Serbo-Croatian. Very cool name. And yeah, so thank you. And once again, you know, we'll see. I'll let you vote, okay? Should they get their jobs back? Do you see Toby? Look, he's about to bark. I know he's about to yawn. All right. Till next time. Let's hope the sound worked. There's the camera.